You might be thinking, it's gotta be luck, right? Or maybe a fancy Ivy League education. It is super tempting to write off extreme wealth as just a lucky break. But when we actually look at the data and the psychology behind these individuals, we find something way deeper. It's absolutely not just about the degrees on their wall, and it's not even about being in the right place at the right time. It's actually all about their cognitive operating system. They literally process the world entirely differently than the average person. Okay, let's dive into this structured blueprint. We're going to break down 6 distinct thinking patterns today: the great mindset divide, building systems, not salaries, hunting problems and calculating risks, multiplying results with leverage, treating failure as data, and finally, thinking bigger than yourself. All right, let's start with number 1, the great mindset divide. Think of this as the operating systems for success. So, most people operate on what we could call employee programming. And look, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it fundamentally limits your scale. The ultra-wealthy reach that level because they completely reject that programming. They just don't think like employees. They think like system builders. They aren't constantly scanning for a paycheck. They're looking to construct a machine, a system that runs totally independently of them. Which brings us to our second point: building systems, not salaries. This is all about focusing on systems rather than just raw effort. The crucial difference here really comes down to the questions they ask themselves. Most folks think in terms of a salary, right? How much am I going to earn this month? It's a straight up exchange of time and effort for cash. But billionaires, they ask a totally different question. How can I earn money while I sleep? They focus intensely on the system itself, not on their own daily grind. They're building wealth-generating machines. Think about the evolution of how we earn. A standard worker sells their time directly. Simple enough. Then, a business owner takes a step up. They build a system that sells time, usually by employing other people. But a billionaire? They take it to the absolute extreme. They build systems that scale globally. They aren't out there just chasing money. They're architecting this massive, scalable structure that inevitably produces it on autopilot. And to build something that massive, you have to completely shift your time horizon. Everyday thinking is incredibly short-term, like what benefit do I get right now, today? But billionaire thinking operates in decades. They're always asking, where is this idea going to be in 10 years? Will this even matter in the future? They intuitively grasp that real generational wealth is built slowly, even if it can be wiped out in an instant. Let's anchor this with a couple of concrete examples. Jeff Bezos didn't build Amazon overnight. He maintained this relentless, laser-like focus for over 20 years before it reached its peak absolute success. Or take Elon Musk. In year 1, he was heavily investing in totally unproven, risky industries, like space exploration and electric cars, long before they were even remotely profitable. They were already planning for year 20 while everyone else was stressing out about year 1. Moving on to number 3. Hunting problems and calculating risks. This is all about finding opportunities in disguise. Basic human nature basically dictates that we try to avoid problems, right? We all want a smooth, easy day. But billionaires? No way. They actively hunt for them. Why? Because to a system builder, a massive problem is literally just a massive business opportunity in disguise. They are constantly looking for what is drastically annoying millions of people. The logic is beautifully simple. The bigger the problem you can solve for society, the bigger your financial reward. Now, hunting massive problems sounds kind of dangerous, right? Ordinary thinking says avoid risk entirely. Just stick to the idea that it's better to stay safe. Billionaires, on the other hand, ask a totally different question. What is the actual downside here, and can I survive it? They aren't these wild, fearless gamblers just blindly rolling the dice. Not at all. They are highly strategic risk takers who constantly evaluate their own survival against the absolute worst-case scenario. And here is exactly how they calculate that risk. First, they ruthlessly weigh the risk against the potential reward. Second, they vividly define that worst-case scenario. Like, if this entire thing goes to 0, am I still alive? Am I completely wiped out? And third, they coldly calculate the mathematical probability of success. If the math works out, they pull the trigger and they completely remove emotion from the equation. That brings us to section 4, multiplying results with leverage. This is basically their secret weapon. So leverage simply means getting way more output for the exact same amount of input. And you basically have 4 main types of leverage at your disposal: money, people, technology, and media. Billionaires categorically refuse to just trade their time for money. Instead, they use these 4 tools to multiply their results infinitely. To put that into perspective, Just look at how this works in practice. If you use media leverage, let's say a single video, that can reach millions of people while you are literally asleep. If you use technology leverage, a single piece of software can serve billions. One well-executed idea can scale globally almost overnight. It is the ultimate multiplier effect. Okay, number 5, treating failure as data. This is all about how we reevaluate setbacks. Look, when most people launch a project and it fails, they see it as a hard end point. It's like a giant stop sign telling them to just give up and go home. But billionaires see failure purely as data acquisition. A failed startup, that's not a tragedy, it's a lesson. A bad investment is literally just paid experience. A wrong decision is merely an essential correction on the path to making the right decision. I absolutely love this mindset shift. They never say, I failed. They say, I learned what doesn't work. By treating failure as just cold, hard data points rather than these devastating personal defeats, billionaires are able to iterate, adapt, and grow significantly faster than anyone else around them. They just take that data and feed it right back into their systems. And finally, Section 6, thinking bigger than yourself, choosing impact over income. The average person's ambition is usually pretty self-contained, right? We ask things like, how can I improve my life? How can I get a better car? Or maybe a nicer house? But billionaire thinking zooms way, way out. They ask, how can I change millions of lives? They transition their entire focus from mere income to massive societal impact. They want to change how entire industries function, not just figure out how to sell a few more products. Just look at the results of that kind of macro thinking. Companies like Amazon, Tesla, and Microsoft, they aren't just businesses. They are absolute forces that have fundamentally altered human history and completely changed global industries. That level of scale only happens when the architect behind it decides to build something that impacts billions rather than just enriching themselves. So, what does this all mean? The ultimate takeaway from this explainer isn't about hoarding money. It's really about mindset. Billionaires think in terms of systems, time, leverage, and scale. And the most empowering part of all of this? These aren't just innate, magical talents you have to be born with. They are replicable, logical thinking patterns that anyone can learn. If you change your thinking, you absolutely can change your future. You now have the blueprint. You understand the cognitive operating system that builds extreme wealth and drives massive impact. And honestly, the tools of leverage have never been more accessible than they are right now today. So I want to leave you with one final question to think about. With this new mindset, what problem will you start hunting today?